Howdy, everybody. I am turning off my notifications once again, and I hope that I don't get beaten up by notifications for a while. So let's make sure. Good, that's shut down. All right. Hopefully, we're good. Um, I like the idea, topic-wise, one that you mentioned last time. I think it was last time. Somewhere along the way, you put one out that was the idea of automation, basically, of like, let's talk about let me see, podcast ideas. Here we go. Um, yeah, like automating processes or scripting common everyday tasks. I think that's a really good one for us to do. I think from um, a challenge point of view as well is to maybe do something. I think we could maybe work into something where it's like, hey, take this week, and when you get to the end of the week, automate something. Like look for something and just spend an hour, 15 minutes, whatever it is. Pick something that you do every day and do it with the mindset of, I'm going to find one thing this week to automate. And it may be very simple, but I think doing something like that is just to like, let's just, think about it for a while and then go do it so that it's not like doing one every day or anything like that. It would be nice, but I think it's more like if it was small, you could do that. Like, add a mail filter every day that it handles just one type of email, or something like that. There's things like that, but I think it's better to say, let's take a week and let's do it and let's see how that works. Is let's take something and give something that's a little bit more in time invested, but a little bit more payoff. The other thing, if I can remember what it was.
You wrote down quite a few. We talked about quite a bit last time in the two episodes ago.
Yeah, and I'm trying. So another one that I want to do that I think is a good, um, it also gives me a chance to talk about a site a little bit is going back and regularly improving your coding skills. It was one of those things we mentioned about, but it's like saying, hey, it's like not, even though we're writing new code and crap like that, it's basically getting off of the rut that you're in and saying, hey, I still need to learn new stuff. I need to be moving forward and growing on a daily basis. So I think those two would make sense to me as it will go for this next set, this next pairing, as it were, as it
I
will
like,
be those two. Go ahead.
yeah, I like that because the first one, interestingly enough, I can add on to that a little bit as well for that discussion because not only is it good to automate, but it's also good to keep up with your scripts in that because I was working on or going through that book for that customer and very quickly realized that I was missing a few things. So I added a couple additional things to pull it down, but those were manual steps. So I never actually folded that back into the code base to hold the data down in the correct format. So like those special characters and things like that, which was faster for me to actually pull it down at the command line and just run a shell command to strip out the data. I actually started folding that back into the code to just strip it out. It actually took longer. So I actually just wrote a script that ran my program. Then it ran the script to use the command line tool to strip it out. It's just one of those where it's like sometimes you need to refine over time, just go back and touch it.
Yeah, I think that's another one that is a topic that we'll probably want to get into is a little bit more of it's really more of like a technical debt kind of discussion is going back and addressing technical debt on a regular basis because there's a lot of that. Obviously, the one job I was talking about is that's like probably the biggest challenge is that there's just huge amounts of technical debt, and some of it's interesting because some of it's actually very simple to fix in the moment. But when you look at it at a whole, it's like, it's the idea of like in a single application, it takes you 5 minutes to do it. And maybe 30 minutes to like change it, test it, verify it, all that kind of crap. But then when you take that out to, 150 applications, that's a lot of time. And then it's like everybody's got to go touch them and some of those aren't. And so I think there's the idea of going back and addressing, paying on your technical debt occasionally. And we've talked about it a little bit. I think it would be a good subject and probably I think we can come up with a couple good challenges for that as well. So we are going to start with, because I got to remind myself, automating stuff. Okay. Oh, I'll give you a little three, two, One. Well, hello and welcome back. We are Developer. We are building better developers. And this season, I think I can remember it. We are building better habits. That is season 23. We are a couple episodes in. Each episode, we are talking about a topic. We pick a topic. How can we be better? What are some things that we can do? How can we make some habits that are going to make us better? And then we have challenges. Now, last time around, one of the things that we did is we talked about the Pomodoro technique. And one of the things we challenged you guys to do is one Pomodoro, little session a day. Love to hear how that went. Did you at least get a week of Pomodoros? I think I'm day short. I will do one today. It is really interesting that doing one has been really interesting because every single time the timer goes off and I'm like, I don't know. I actually have had every single time I've spent a couple more minutes afterwards, just sort of like, oh, wait, I got to do this, do this. And then had to like cut it off. And I did come back to that later, but it actually was really good to just be like, all right, I'm going to get really focused. And when I do, it's amazing how fast that 25 minutes goes. Cause I was doing 25 on fives. It's amazing how fast that goes. And it was amazing. It's like, oh yeah, I did get a lot of crap done. So let us know how these challenges go. This episode, we're going to talk about automation. We're going to talk about finding ways to make your life better by looking at what you do a lot. It's the same thing. It's our profession. So we should be good at building automation of some sort and scripting things and batching things and all those things that are what we do for everybody else. Before I get too far, let me introduce myself. My name is Rob Broadhead. I'm one of the founders of Developers of Building Better Developers. Also, the founder of RB Consulting, where we essentially what I just talked about, we help businesses understand where they're at, take a look at your current systems and positions and roadmaps and things like that, if you even have one, and then help you create a plan, a roadmap for the future to make sure that you're using your technology better. You're taking that technology sprawl and all the pain related to it, and through integration, automation, and simplification, finding a better way to use all those things to leverage technology to make your life better. Good thing and bad thing. Good thing for me is I went to vote the other day. I did some early voting and it took me, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes total, something like that. It was really quick. I didn't have to stand in line very long. Actually, it's sort of like icing on the cake is as I was going through, I looked back and the line was growing the whole time I was there. So I like got in. We got in just in time, got our voting done, got out. So good thing. Bad thing. Oh gosh, what kind of bad things do I want to? I've had a week of bad things. Bad thing is I had to is it's one of those things, it's one of those business things. It's always bad for me when I have to go like nudge people, when I have to nudge a customer where it's like, hey, you've got like an invoice out there, or hey, you've got something you owe me. Sometimes now the invoices are harder because it's like, hey, I need you to pay us for our work. Work is not quite as hard, but still, where it's like, hey, you promised me this file, or you promised me this content, or this stuff that I need in order to work to move forward. And I had a couple of those. It was sort of my Friday, like, yeehaw, it's Friday thing, as I had to go through and poke several people to say, hey, you know me this, I need this. Hey, you forgot to give me that. And that's just never fun. It's so that's a culmination of a week of bad things. One of the good things, though, is on the other side of the internet there. Michael, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, my name is Michael Malash. I'm one of the founders of Developer, Building Better Developers. I'm also the founder of Envision QA, where we do multiple things. We help small to mid-sized companies work with their software stack, help you understand and deal with problematic software. If you're a healthcare clinician or small healthcare shop, we also help you build medical software customized to your clinics, to your office spaces. So you don't have to go buy those big, expensive tools out there, Epic, to kind of get what you need out of your software. And to kind of lead into today's discussion, we also help you improve your user experiences with quality control solutions through things like automation testing, building automation scripts, and actually working with users to identify what your software actually needs to do so you can test it before it actually rolls out. Good and bad. Good thing this week, I actually finally checked off a couple of to do things I had to do around my office. For probably the last 6 months, I've had some spotty internet connections with one of my routers, kept thinking it was a switch. Finally, I just went out and replaced everything, rewired everything. Everything's working now as it's supposed to, except although last night, the bad thing is I think I have a Plex server that might still be going down, so I may have to replace one more thing, but I almost have all the media stuff in the house working smoothly. So my wife, who is not technology sound, is happy.
Happy wife, happy life, as they say. Our happy life is going to come from automating some of our work. Now, this is amazingly to me, this is actually a challenge a lot of developers run into. If we are essentially, I'm probably over dramatizing it, but just a little. If we are dragged kicking and screaming into automation, we will do it. And then once we are, we're usually fairly confident with that. We're pretty happy with it. We're content. For example, I know a lot of times that developers have stepped into something, built a project, they've got version control, they've got some basic things there. But when they get into the CI/CD world and automating builds and deployments, they're like, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that right now. Then when they get to that point where it's like, okay, every time I do a commit that gets reviewed, it goes in and it pushes out to all the places. They're like, that's great, that's awesome. But we don't want to do that naturally. We have too many of these manual tasks that we do on a regular basis that if we just would invest sometimes 10 or 15 minutes, we can save ourselves easily that 10 or 15 minutes in the first day or two, and maybe more than that. And we have talked in the past about things like utilizing tools that are out there, like your mail filters with your mail and cleaning that up and streamlining that. I don't want to talk about that this time. I want us to take something that's a little bit bigger, and I want us to look at how do we find a way to make it easier. Now, when we step into this kind of we'll call it a mini project. When we step into this little mini project of I want to improve something, that is wide ranging. So what we first want to do is find some targets of what we can improve. Now, like we do for our customers in a lot of cases, one of the things we're going to do is we're going to look at what are the things that have the greatest value to improve them, to do process improvement. And that could be either something that is run, occasionally that takes a very, very long time. And it would be very helpful to have it take a very less long time or something like that is to cut that time down. Maybe cut like monthly processing if it takes 3 days, and maybe it would be much better if we could do it in 3 hours, things like that. But more likely, what's going to help us are the things that we do on a daily basis, the things that we spend 5 or 10, 15 minutes, or maybe an hour or two each day doing, and find a way to improve that or automate that. And that's where I want us to look as we're moving forward into this, as we're embracing this particular habit. What we need to do is take a period of time, like usually a good time is a week, because this is where we're going to see multiple daily tasks, and keep a little closer eye on essentially like maybe at the end of the day, take a look back and just do like a little brief like log or something of like, what did I do today? And give yourself at least a rough, like, how long did it take? The how long did it take in itself can be a very interesting question to answer, because there's a lot of times that if you're asked, how long does it take you to do X? You'll quickly say, that takes 5 minutes. If you actually look at the time during the day, it may be 30 minutes or an hour. Checking mail is one of those things. People will be like, oh, I just spend a few minutes a day looking at mail. But if you actually really break it down, you'll find out that maybe you're looking at it for an hour every day. Now, there are certain things that we do that are our rituals, essentially, that we're going to do. With a developer, a lot of times these things come into the play, like maybe researching something, downloading a file, checking if something needs to be updated, maybe checking status, ticket statuses and things like that, looking at my dashboard. What are the tickets that are on me to do today? prepping or fallout from a stand-up meeting, sort of like, okay, how do I get my like daily status? How do I put my little status together? How do I fill that out? We also do a lot of things like the equivalent of now, a lot of people don't do compiles, but you may compile or build or deploy software. You may spin up and down, virtual machines or containers or things like that. There's all these little tasks that we do during the day that we do regularly enough that even if it takes us 5 minutes a pop, if we could cut a minute off of that, it may save us 10 minutes a day. Not only that is if we can find a way to automate these things to effectively make it either run one command line thing or click a button, then it saves us from typos and things like that. So one of the things that I think we can look at if you find yourself regularly on the command line doing something, usually it's going to be like a build, a run, a test run, executing a couple of scripts, those kinds of things. That would be a great place to start. If it takes you 5 commands to do that, and they're basically the same commands all the time, especially if you're just like, if you've got the history and you're just like scrolling back up and you go like, execute this, back up, execute that, execute that. That's a perfect example. Turn it into a batch or a shell script. Take those couple of things and those, maybe it's 3 or 5 or 10 commands. And instead of running, put it into a shell script. And now it's one script. And it may be one that is just literally all you do is you execute that script and that's it. Maybe it's like you execute that script, but with like a path parameter or something like that. And this is where if you're looking from day to day, you may find things like, hey, I do this for a project when I get going. When I start my day, I execute these couple of things to get my project going. But I also have 5 projects I'm working on at this time. So now I'm executing this 5 times a day. So maybe I can take those disparate steps and give them like I mean, it may be as simple as I just give it a value that's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's each of my various projects. I can execute that, have it do the setup or whatever it is that it needs to do, and then I'm off and running. If you want to get a little more graphic and or GUI in your world, then maybe what you do is it could be something like, let's say you log in every day, and when you log in, you have 5 applications that you fire up every time. You may want to put it in the startup, but you may say, that's too heavy. I don't always want to do that. So instead, maybe you have a button that's just basically like fire off these 5 applications. You may also want to do some sort of an organizational kind of approach. It's like, I usually go to these 6 folders to get information. Well, okay, instead of doing that, let's pull those folders into one location or have a central button I can look at to give me a link of that. Maybe there's a lot of websites that you go to. You can always use, favorites and things like that. You can keep up, 15 tabs that you can keep open at a given time. Or maybe what you do is create yourself a little web page that is a click on this and it spawns the 15 tabs that you want to have and logs you into everything. Those are the kinds of tasks that we can't really can't have somebody else step in and tell us this is what you need to do. These are the ones that we are going to be the best to do it because we need to look at what we do each day. What's the time and the effort involved in it? And where can we maybe, skip a couple steps or automate going to step 1, 2, 3 instead of us manually doing each of them? Maybe do all 3 at once. Maybe do something where there's something we're sort of eyeballing it every, so like we're watching logs and we're just looking for something to happen. Automates a watcher on the log, automates something that's going through there and says, hey, if I get this thing, pop an email or pop a message box or whatever it happens to be. These are just a couple of places that you can go in your automation exploration, but they are all going to be, I think, very valuable. It may take a little bit of time to figure this out and how you automate it, but I think you'll find that it will be worthwhile. And at some point, you'll get to the point where like, wow, how did I ever do it? Why did I ever do it manually? Now, you may ask, why would I ever pass control over to Michael? Well, you're going to find out right now. So what are your thoughts on this?
Hey, Rob, thanks. So you've already talked about using like the command line interface. You talked about the history and that with automating scripts and builds. Love that. I'm going to take this and build upon that. So I'm going to actually go by example. One of the biggest things, and me and Rob talked about this a lot, is we don't necessarily always deal with daily tasks when we look at automation. When we think automation sometimes, because we've been doing this for a long time, we look at the tasks we're working on. So, am I building a website? Okay, what things do I need to always do when I build a website? Okay, well, am I doing like a LAMP, a MAMP, or some type of MySQL, Linux PHP build? Well, if you do that, you can almost guarantee build a script to install. So once you do it one time, if you go through and you go through your history and you take everything you did that first time, save that as a script somewhere, you're going to probably use that again on the next project. One of the key things, though, if you do write these script files and you do keep track of these, make sure you add README files or some type of documentation with your scripts, or within your scripts, add some comments. I have been very bad at this over the years. I found old scripts that I've been looking for where I didn't document the script. The file got moved away from the documentation, and I'm like, what the hell is this? Oh, this is what I need for this. And it's like, crap. Okay, so the reason I stress this is one of the cool things, especially for those of you starting out as new developers or even new entrepreneurs. One of the big things we always need as business owners is we need a website, right? So we need to spin up a new website. Well, AWS provides a free tier that lets you get away with almost no cost to throwing up a standard blank, standard template website. You can throw up a WordPress site, whatever. Well, the cool thing is if you do it once, the following year, if you need to keep it on the low ball, you can create a new website, spin up a new AWS instance, free tier, extract your WordPress site or your website, run that script on the new server, and just copy your files over, or even write a script to export your files over. So at the end of the year, you can have a push button solution to literally take one site from one domain to another domain with little or no effort. Where to spin it up the first time probably took you 3 hours or longer, depending upon your skill level. Secondly, Rob, you mentioned logs. So logs are wonderful. So if we kind of stay within the AWS world, there's a lot of information stored in that AWS console. There's, logs, there's service alerts, there's performance benchmarks. AWS is a great example of where you can use automation because you can go in there and you can apply alerts. You can go in there and you can apply thresholds. Oh, if my instance is starting to peak out at 90, 100%, spin up a second instance or spin up a load balancer that could load multiple instances in the background. Your application scales, and all that is handled through automation scripting. If you don't have that, and your system crashes, you're going to get an angry call from that customer, and you're going to have to go onto the site, figure out what's going on, and that takes time, money, and frustration with your customer. So you want to do these things. You want to automate them. Now, when you first spin it up, that may not be in your mind. That's fine. But before you go live, you better have at least walked through some scenarios where you have some automation in place to keep that application live so you have zero downtime. The third thing I kind of want to touch on are frameworks. So as developers, we write a lot of code. And a lot of the code that we write is pretty much standard boilerplate, which is what we call. We have, depending upon the language, you have to have some structure or some format of some type of method, structure, whatever, within your code base to actually run the file, to build a website, to build a mobile app. Well, you can actually write code generators or use code generators to automate that process. You can push a button, boom, here's a CRUD, here's a basic application. Now just go fill in the blanks. Now just go quickly add all the pieces you need to get your application up and running. Now, for those of you that are more junior, look at using like third-party dependencies or potential tools to do this initially. But once you get better at this and you get more advanced, you'll probably want to start writing your own. You're going to get into these habits of, oh, I like this approach. I like this framework. This seems to be the best practice for this. And what you do is you write that into your code generators. So when you go build the next project, you kind of have a little checkbox. Oh, I need this, I need this, I need this, build. Here's your application. Now go fill in the blanks. So it's just one way to kind of step in through automation. And the last point I want to talk about is kind of from my years of teaching Microsoft Professional, which is teaching kind of business developers how to use Microsoft application products like Word, Excel, Access. It's funny because not just .NET, but behind the scenes in the Microsoft Office framework is like a Visual Basic architecture or a Visual Basic application, a macro system that's hiding behind the scenes. Now, this over time, it's been more replaced by C# or .NET. But what is interesting about it is even if you are not a developer, even if all you do is business documentation, you write spreadsheets, you build little access databases to store collections of data, or you write templates or Word documents constantly for business meetings and that. You can use macros, which are automated scripts within Office, to essentially script out tasks to build templates, to build spreadsheets, to do calculations for you that you would have to sit there and figure out your formulas for. So macros are just another way to think about using automation. And ironically, on Windows, macros are also another way through the Windows dashboard to kind of do those collection things like Rob was talking about, where you could, oh, you want to spin up 5 applications? Well, set up a little macro. Build the macro to say, hey, start this, start this, start this, kick it off. Macros essentially translate into, can be transferred into shell scripts. It's just another kind of scripting way of doing things in a Windows environment. Mac has something similar. They have an automator tool that you can use. But these are just things, look at your daily tasks. If you see yourself doing something again and again and again, you probably want to automate that. And ideally, if you don't know what you're doing every day, if you're on Windows, it's a little bit harder, but maybe look at key tracking tools, or possibly even look at like application tracking to see what you're in, where you're spending your time. And that can help you identify, oh, I spent 2 hours doing this today. That really is a 5-minute task that I can write a script for and push a button once a day, or maybe two, or maybe not even push the button, maybe schedule it to run when I need it to run 5 or 6 times a day, and just have it email me what I need, or just put it into a file. And at the end of the day, there's my report or whatever I need to do. So again, automating isn't just about programming. Automating can be simply taking your tasks and batching them together using these kind of automated tools, scripting, batching, macros. So no matter what your technical level is, take a look. Do a quick Google search on how can I automate something? How can I write a macro? And you'll find thousands of examples online very quickly to just kind of tailor to what you need. And now that we live in the world of semi-AI smartness, pick your favorite AI tool and just say, hey, I do this. Is there a way to automate that? But be careful, throw in an operating system, because there are different solutions based on your different platforms that you're using.
So now after that, I know you're like itching to go. So let's give you a challenge for the week. What I want you to do, the challenge for this week is to take this week ahead of us and spend at least, 5 days of looking at what do you do each day? What do you do? Where do you spend your time? One of the things that Michael mentioned, there are a lot of apps out there that are basically time tracking apps that will show you where do you spend your time? What are you doing? So you may want something like that if you don't feel that you are going to be able to figure it out yourself. If you feel like you're just like, I'm just too busy, I get to the end of the day, I forget what I did. I get that. Use a tool, it'll help you out. When you get to the end of that time, look at the things that you do and pick one. Pick one of the things that's out there and spend a little bit of time, maybe an hour or two, maybe even, and automate it. Build an automation process for that. It doesn't have to be, like, for example, it doesn't have to be a full-blown code generator. If all you do is build a little shell script that copies and puts together, from maybe 10 selections of code snippets and turns around and builds a file for you, boom, you have automation. If it's something as simple as something that goes out, like this, something I used before, there's all these sites like Michael talked about. If you've got all these customers, you've got all these sites that you just want to make sure that they're good, that they're up. That was like the simplest thing is, or like an API. Is it still running? Are things going? You could build like just build a little app that goes out and pings each of those things. Those kinds of tools, it wouldn't take you very long. It's a really good little side hustle kind of thing to do. It's a little side project to do. It may be an opportunity to learn something new. Maybe it is you go out and you're like, hey, I spend way too much time building status reports in Word. Go look up VBA and how do I, maybe templatize some of that, or how do I pull in information like from Slack, that all my Slack discussions, how can I pull that information in and build a status out of it, or connect to Jira and get information from that? Those kinds of things. Look at if this then that, IFTTT. I think there's three T's there.com, or Make, or some of these other sites that are out there that's their whole purpose. Zapier, these are the places they are built to automate these kinds of things. If you haven't looked at them, make that part of it. Take a look, take 5 minutes and look at one of these sites and see if it makes sense to, or if they've got a built-in automation for something that you do on a regular basis. Along the way, make sure that within that automation, you send us an email at the end of it. It says, hey, I automated this and this is why. Okay, you don't have to send us an automation. You don't have to do it every day, but I would love to hear from you. We'd love to get your suggestions out, not only your suggestions for moving forward, but feedback on what you've done. How have these challenges worked? Where have they improved? And maybe even, dare I say, built a habit that has helped you out. Because our goal is not for you to just do this challenge and be done. Do this challenge, and then the next week, do it again. And the next week, do it again, because that is how you're going to build your habits. As always, like I said, you can shoot us an email, but you can also reach out on developreneur.com. We have contact form there. You can see us, you can follow us, you can do all those good things on X at Developreneur. You can go out to YouTube. If you aren't there, you can check out the Developreneur channel. You can see this and lots of other content that we've put together over the years. Just however it is, if you're out there on a podcast, whatever your favorite podcast device and listening thing is, there's most likely a way to do a comment, to give us some sort of a follow up, some sort of feedback. We want to hear it, good and bad. We want to hear, because you guys help us make this whole thing better. We're doing it for you, so we need to get your feedback. That being said, go out there and have yourself a great day, a great week, and we will talk to you next time. Bonus material. I had one that I thought about and I just didn't get into it. I was like, all right, I'm going to save this for bonus material. And now I forgot it. So I'm going to throw it at you first. Do you have some bonus material you want to throw out there?
Yeah, I got two. So one, because you mentioned like emails and automating emails, there are a lot of tools out there. The biggest one that comes to mind is MailChimp. You can go customize your customer base. If you send a lot of emails to a lot of email groups, use an email administrator like MailChimp, because that's going to keep your site whitelisted. You're not going to get blacklisted if you have to send out a lot of email. You can do it yourself, but be warned, you might get blacklisted if you do it wrong. Additionally, the other tool I've liked to use over time is called Toggle. It works on pretty much all devices. And what's really cool is if you get the paid version of it, it will actually track what applications you're in for what time you're in. And it really works great with Jira, because if you're actually starting a ticket and you click start, it will actually start the timer. You could go work your ticket. When you're done, you can click stop. So you actually can kind of see how long you're working on a particular issue. Now, the only gotcha with that is if you forget to hit that, the timer is going to keep going. But that is the nice part, though. If you do the professional version, if you go to something else and start doing something else, it will keep track of that. So if you forget to hit stop, you can go look at what you were doing and say, oh, I stopped at this point and stop, but this really needs time. So you can actually go customize your time tracking. So it's just an extra bonus there.
And there are a lot of those. There are a lot of good time trackers like that. There are ways to start timers. You can always build your own too. There's a lot of ways that you can skin the cat, as it were. No offense to cat lovers, and get that kind of information from the week behind. Some of the things that the week that has gone by, and what did you get done. Bonus. I guess one little bonus thing is, as you're going through this, do this on a daily basis. As you're trying to look at what you did, do it on a daily basis. If you get to the end of the week and you're like, okay, now I want to look at what I did this week, there's so many things that get lost in the weeds. There's so much that you'll forget about. So do this on a daily basis. Is sit down at the end of the day, take a couple minutes. It's probably going to work great with like, putting status if you've got some sort of daily status thing that you do. Do that all in just one little sitting at the end of the day. What did I do? How did I do it? If you can make notes along the day, even better. That's just like a bonus to you. That'll wrap this one up. And we will be back. We're going to come into the next episode. We've already talked about what the topic is, so it won't be too much of a surprise to you, but we'll come back anyways, get a little bit of time on that, and step into the next thing. So go out there and have yourself a good one, and we will talk to you next time.